February 2026. American missiles are hitting Iranian soil. The Strait of Hormuz, the channel that carries 20% of the world's oil, is being shut down by Iranian forces. Global markets are shaking, and somewhere in Beijing, Xi Jinping is watching all of it. Quietly, carefully, patiently. Because here is what this war is doing that nobody on cable news is telling you. Every missile America fires at Iran is a missile not pointed at China. Every $1 billion burned in this conflict is $1 billion not spent defending Taiwan. Every week America stays stuck in this war, China gets stronger. But before we talk about what this war is costing America, we need to talk about how it started. Because America didn't choose this war. It was guided there. Before the first American missile hit Iranian soil, before the Strait of Hormuz started closing, before oil hit $100 and global markets started shaking. There was a meeting, a private meeting, a small room, Israeli officials and the Trump inner circle. And in that meeting, Israel made a sales pitch. Not a request, not a warning, a sales pitch. Carefully prepared, months in the making, designed for one specific audience, a president who wanted to be remembered. Here's what they said. Iran is weak, weaker than it has ever been in 40 years. Hezbollah, gone. Hamas, broken. The economy collapsing. The population ready to turn on the regime. This is the window. This is the only window. And here is what's in it for you. You will be the president who ended Iran's nuclear program permanently. The thing Obama couldn't do. The thing Biden wouldn't do. You. Trump said yes. And what followed, what has been unfolding since February 2026, is not just a war in the Middle East. It is the most important stress test of American military power since the Cold War. And America is failing it. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what has been exposed. Not the version you're getting from cable news. Not the oil price ticker. Not the diplomatic statements. Not the both sides framing. The real version. How Israel engineered this. What the fighting has actually revealed about U.S. military capability, including a leaked number that should alarm every single person watching this. What China is quietly concluding as it watches every missile exchange and counts every interceptor fired. And an economic shock already building that markets have completely missed, and it has nothing to do with oil. By the end of this video, the way you understand American power in the world will look fundamentally different. Stay with me. To understand how we got here, you need to understand the argument Israel made, and why it worked so well on this particular American president. By late 2024, Israel had genuinely achieved something remarkable on the battlefield. Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, the group that for decades served as Tehran's forward deterrent on Israel's northern border, had been devastated. Its leadership was killed. Its infrastructure was destroyed. Its military capacity was shattered. Hamas in Gaza was broken as a governing force. Iran's so-called axis of resistance, the network of proxies it had spent 40 years building across the Middle East, was in ruins. This was the genuine strategic insight that Israel brought to Washington. And it wasn't wrong. Iran was at its most isolated in a generation. The question that should have been asked much more seriously, was what happens after the strike? What comes next? Who fills the vacuum? What does a wounded, cornered Iranian regime actually do when its back is against the wall? Those questions did not get satisfactory answers, because the model that Israel and elements of the Trump administration were working from was essentially this. Regimes like Iran are held together by fear. Remove the leadership, and the fear evaporates. Remove the fear, and the structure collapses. It's a clean theory. It has one problem. It has never worked. Not in Iraq, not in Libya, not anywhere. But it worked as a sales pitch. And for Trump, who genuinely wanted a legacy-defining foreign policy moment, who had spent his first term unable to close the Iran nuclear deal, who was surrounded by advisors deeply aligned with Israeli strategic priorities, the pitch landed. And so the strikes began. In the first hours after the strikes on Iranian leadership, there was genuine optimism in Washington. Then reality arrived. The Iranian regime did not collapse. There was no popular uprising. The military did not fracture. What happened instead was the opposite. A rally around the flag effect, a government that declared itself under existential attack, and a military that immediately began doing what it had been planning for exactly this scenario. Iran hit the Pars gas field, a critical Israeli energy installation. Then it moved on Qatari gas facilities. Then it began doing something that no one in Washington had fully wargamed. It started closing the Strait of Hormuz, not just threatening to close it, actually closing it. Boarding ships, firing warning shots, mining approaches, using the one lever it has always held, the lever that gives a country with a collapsing economy genuine power over the entire global trading system. And here is where the second, catastrophic miscalculation revealed itself. The American military wasn't ready to respond. The Marine Expeditionary Unit needed to board and interdict vessels in the strait. It was still sailing from Okinawa. The naval assets for a serious blockade enforcement operation were not pre-positioned, because the plan had assumed the regime would be gone before any of this became necessary. The U.S. had planned for victory. It had not planned for a war. Now let me give you the number I mentioned at the beginning, because this is the moment where the story stops being about this conflict and starts being about something much larger. According to information leaked to CNN this week, the United States military's stockpile of Patriot missile interceptors and THAAD rounds, the systems that shoot down incoming ballistic missiles, is currently at half its normal level. Half. Think about what that means. These are not bullets. A single Patriot interceptor costs $4 million. A THAAD round costs $12 million. They are built slowly on limited production lines by a defense industry that for 20 years had no serious reason to build them in large numbers, because America's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were fought against enemies with no air force, no missiles, nothing to shoot down. And now, in a matter of months, fighting a country with a GDP smaller than the state of Texas, the United States has burned through half its supply. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, reportedly went to Trump before this conflict began and said words to this effect: "We can do this, but it will leave us dangerously exposed if something happens in the Pacific." That warning was overruled, which brings me to the country that has been watching every single one of those missile exchanges, counting every interceptor fired, and drawing very careful conclusions. China has said almost nothing publicly about this war. Xi Jinping made one carefully worded statement, that the world cannot accept the law of the jungle, a line designed to position China as the responsible, stable power in a world being destabilized by American aggression. Behind the scenes, China has been doing quiet diplomacy, pressuring Iran to reopen the strait, not out of loyalty to the West, but because a closed strait damages Chinese supply chains too. Working through Pakistan on negotiations, protecting its economic relationships with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. This is a country that has been thinking about this region strategically for decades, and right now it is watching an opportunity take shape. The Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, urged the United States not to do this. They saw what was coming. Their counsel was ignored. And now they have absorbed enormous economic damage from a conflict they opposed and had no vote in. China is going to those governments and offering something very simple: reliability. We don't make decisions that blow up your economy without asking you first. We don't start wars and then ask you to deal with the consequences. We are a partner you can plan around. That is an extraordinarily powerful message in a region that is furious with Washington right now. But here is the deeper question, the one that keeps people in Taipei awake at night. The expected Chinese timetable for being militarily ready to act on Taiwan was 2027. The entire deterrent holding that timeline back was the American security guarantee, the credible threat that the U.S. Navy would show up and stop them. That guarantee just got much less credible. If America cannot force open a strait against Iran, a regional power with no aircraft carriers, no stealth fighters, a fraction of China's military capability, What exactly is the plan for the Taiwan Strait against the People's Liberation Army Navy, which is now the largest fleet in the world by ship count? I want to be fair here. China is also drawing cautionary lessons. It sent advanced air defense systems to Iran after last year's conflict. Those systems were destroyed by Israeli and American strikes, and that has caused serious embarrassment in Beijing. A reckoning over why their best technology failed in combat conditions. So China is not reading this as pure confidence. It is reading it carefully, on both sides. But on balance, the conclusion that American deterrence is materially weaker today than it was a year ago is very hard to avoid. And history suggests that when adversaries reach that conclusion, they act on it. Not immediately, but they act on it. I want to shift to something that I think is being almost completely missed in the public conversation about this conflict. Everyone is watching the oil price, $100 a barrel. High, painful, inflationary. That is not the real story. The real story is what is not moving. A tanker that was scheduled to leave the Gulf 6 weeks ago is still sitting there. That ship was supposed to carry goods to ports in Asia. At those ports, cargo was waiting. That cargo is now stacked on a dockside, and more is arriving every day from production lines that don't stop just because shipping has. Supply chains don't simply pause. They seize up. They back up. And the damage compounds invisibly for weeks before it shows up in any price index. Here is the commodity that concerns me most. Not oil, fertilizer, potassium, sulfur. The chemical inputs that modern agriculture runs on. They flow through the same routes. They are not moving. And unlike oil, which hurts your cost of living, a fertilizer shortage hits food production with a multi-month lag. By the time it appears in food prices, the harvest that would have prevented it has already failed. For countries in Africa already dealing with sovereign debt crises, this is not an economic inconvenience. It is a humanitarian catastrophe in slow motion. And yet markets are calm, equities are holding. Investors seem to believe this resolves itself. There's a reason for that belief, and it is not entirely irrational. The assumption is that Trump will find a way out. He always finds a way out. But here's the problem. Iran has stated clearly it will not negotiate while the American blockade remains. America has stated the blockade stays. The second round of talks in Pakistan has gone nowhere, and the economic damage is not waiting for the diplomacy to catch up. Markets gave no warning before 2008. They gave no warning before the dot-com crash. The idea that a calm market means a calm situation is one of the most dangerous assumptions in economics. Watch the dollar. Watch the food price index. Those are the real indicators. When the food price index moves significantly, governments destabilize. That is not a metaphor. That is recent history. So, can America recover from this? Militarily, yes. Stockpiles can be rebuilt. Production lines can be expanded. The Navy can be grown. But these things take years. And right now, the Pentagon is operating in a state of unusual internal chaos. The Secretary of the Navy was just fired mid-crisis. Senior officials are leaving. Institutional coherence is low at exactly the moment it needs to be high. Diplomatically, it is harder. The Gulf states were ignored. They will remember that. China is offering them an alternative relationship. That process doesn't reverse with a single speech or a new administration. And in terms of credibility, the credibility of the American security guarantee, the foundational promise on which the entire post-World War II international order was built, that is the hardest thing of all to rebuild. Because credibility is not rebuilt by words. It is rebuilt by consistent, reliable, predictable behavior over years. And the world has watched for the past several years as American behavior has become less consistent, less reliable, and less predictable than at any point since World War II. There is a line from the Indian foreign minister, a man who spent years as his country's ambassador in Beijing, that I keep coming back to. He said, "China is winning without fighting. America is fighting without winning." He said that about a different conflict, in a different era. But I cannot think of a more precise description of what we are watching right now. The Strait of Hormuz will reopen eventually. A deal will be struck. The ships will move again. But the things that have been revealed by this conflict, about missiles, about naval capacity, about the gap between America's reputation and America's reality, those do not disappear when the crisis ends. The world has seen something, and it will not unsee it. That is the story that matters, and we are going to keep following it closely. If this kind of analysis is what you come here for, subscribe. We do this every week without the noise. And tell me in the comments, do you think America can recover? And on what timeline? I'll see you in the next one.